Okay, I think I'm going to start now. So, hello everyone, welcome to the Footprints Digital Festival, Croeso. Today we'll be talking about moving away from fast fashion. We are providing simultaneous translation in Welsh, so if you want to access that, there's an interpretation button at the bottom of your screen, and if you just click Welsh, we're just going to test that now. So good evening, just making sure that the translation is working. Looking forward to tonight's discussion. You can submit questions to the panelists. Those will not be answered until our Q&A session. Wonderful, translation is working. There's going to be 10 to 15 minutes at the end of this where we're going to answer all of your questions, but you can ask them throughout the talk, and we have also received the ones that you asked as you were booking this as well. So yeah, each of our panelists will be doing a 5 to 10 minute talk on a topic of their choice, and then we're going to have a Q&A. I should probably start by introducing myself. Hi, I'm Izzy. I run the blog The Quirky Environmentalist. I talk online quite a bit about sustainable fashion, although right now not so much, as I'm currently doing my master's degree in renewable energy, and that is taking up a lot of my time that I would normally spend blogging. So yeah, I'm going to give it another minute just to make sure that everyone who is coming in is going to be here, because it's only 3 minutes past. And then we'll get started on our actual talks. And just a reminder, in case you missed it, there is interpretation in Welsh. Just click the interpretation button and click Welsh. That should be working for everyone, and you can submit questions throughout. If you click the Q&A button, you should be able to submit those, and those will be answered in a discussion at the end. And now that I've managed to sit for a whole minute, I think we will give this a start. And it is Ophelia who is starting us off today with her talk. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me first of all, Izzy. I'm really excited for this discussion. So I'm Ophelia Dos Santos. I'm a Welsh textiles designer based in Cardiff, specialising in hand embroidery for fashion. My works incorporate scrap and recycled materials, and through my work I aim to inspire environmental and social change by encouraging people to think about how we buy, reuse and throw away fashion. I'm going to be speaking about upcycling today and a little bit about greenwashing too. I try not to ramble too much, but if you have any questions, I think you can ask them in the chat box as well. So I'll start by saying that the best way and most effective way to support sustainable fashion is to avoid buying newly produced clothing. This is because second-hand and vintage clothing require no new energy for production and is zero waste, depending on the logistics of things. So yeah, that's why I really encourage people to buy second-hand. I also get people to appreciate their wardrobes more by upcycling old clothing that they might not have worn. You can upcycle by either refreshing an item, repairing an item, or altering an item. And I make little tutorial videos online of how to use simple stitches to make a big difference to our wardrobes. I think there was just a slide on it. So yeah, getting creative as well with your wardrobe can be very empowering and rewarding, and that's why I love playing around with stitches and having fun with it. You can also use other methods of upcycling, like painting or tie-dye. A lot of people are doing bleaching as well, so there's a lot of different ways. Even if you don't see yourself as being like typically creative, there's ways you can upcycle by maybe changing a button or changing buttons on tops, or like cropping a top so it fits you a bit better. And what we can do this by like it basically prolongs the life of our clothing, and also prevents us from buying newly produced clothing. So it's a good way to add to your wardrobe without buying newly produced. So but not everyone is kind of into upcycling, so there are other things you can do. You can buy from a sustainable brand. It's just about finding weaving out the sustainable brand from those that greenwash. So for those who don't know, greenwashing is basically like a marketing strategy the brands use to kind of get our attention, and it kind of aims to capitalize off our concerns for the environment. And they'll do this with other brands and with other industries as well, and other causes. So you might have seen some like charity t-shirts made recently to support like mental illness or Black Lives Matter, for example. And brands kind of do this to entice us in, and they're not always genuine with their values towards these causes. So I would say one of the best ways to kind of spot the brands that are greenwashing is to notice the buzzwords that they use. So they'll use words like environmentalism, sustainability, ethical on their brands. And these words, they basically have no like legal requirements, so they don't exactly mean that they're sustainable. So I always recommend doing your research on a brand before you buy into them. You might want to find out about a brand's like factories, where they source their fibers and materials. There's lots of different things that you can do to really tell which brands are genuine and which brands are greenwashing. I'm just going to check if there's any questions quick. I think there were some questions about upcycling, Izzy. I'm not sure what they were.
Yeah, so the questions are going to be answered with all of us at the end.
Okay. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I think I'll wrap up by saying don't feel too overwhelmed by having to shop sustainably. You can kind of take your time with it and make gradual changes. You can't buy your way into having a sustainable wardrobe, so just allow yourself to grow and make changes naturally.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ophelia.
Thank you.
Love that introduction to upcycling, reusing your wardrobe, as well as a bit on greenwashing, and we will have a bit more on greenwashing in just a bit. But next up, we're going to move on to Ellen. If you would like to turn your camera on and introduce yourself to us and what you'll be talking about today. Hopefully we'll have the camera switched around in a second.
Hello, I am, oh, there we go, fab. Oh, awesome. I couldn't turn my video on by myself. I'm Ellen. I run the sustainable lifestyle blog, Welsh Wanderer, and I do that in conjunction with studying my degree as well. So much like Izzy, my posts are sort of sporadic when I have the time. I'll be going over size inclusivity when it comes to shopping sustainably. As a sort of, I wouldn't consider myself plus size, but I fall within the sort of category of sizing. So I sort of know firsthand what it's like, especially when I first started shopping fast fashion, because you have all these options when it comes to mainstream brands, and then suddenly it feels like you have nothing. and it can be overwhelming because you just sort of think, well, what do I do now? Do you know what I mean? I want to be able to make a positive impact on the planet, but I also have no idea where to start, and it sort of feels like you're just completely stuck. So I just want to go over a few statistics mainly. So in the UK, the average woman is a size 16, and where was I? I am so sorry, I've lost my place. There we go. So the average woman is a size 16. A majority of the sustainable brands that offer larger sizing tend to stop their sizing at about a 14, and this is sort of labelled as extra large. I've encountered several occasions where I've gone onto a brand's website, they're sustainable, everything looks great, looks really promising. I go to buy it, and the extra large measurements are about 5-6 inches too small, and I just sort of think, great. So on the whole, a Fashion United survey found that only 17% of fast fashion across the board, so both fast fashion and sustainable fashion, catered to a size 20 to 30, and then that is just half of what's being offered to the smaller sizes across the board as well, with 44% of clothing being catered to a size UK 0 to 10, and 39% catering to a size 12 to 18. And something else which was quite interesting by the same survey found that on the whole, plus size individuals had statistically lower income compared to people of smaller sizes. Therefore, it sort of makes it difficult to shop sustainable options, particularly when they're on the whole more expensive. For example, I'm currently wearing a top which I spent £40 on. Bit of a sort of flashy purchase for me as a student with no additional job. It can be quite hard to sort of find stuff that works for you. But I think it's important as well, as Ophelia said, just to sort of reuse what you've got, make the most of everything you currently have. I believe that the average number of times a piece of clothing is worn in the UK before ending up in landfill is about seven times, which is, it's low. So although sustainable brands aren't currently offering what we need, you can use what you've already got and explore other avenues such as shopping secondhand, making your own clothing, eBay deals on there. I know that I found sort of trousers that I've been looking for ages on ASOS, and I ended up finding them for about £4 or £5 on Depop. So sometimes it can come through, but on the whole, the options are limited, and I think there's a lot to be said for the fact that it might be easy for someone who, for example, is like a size UK 6 to shop sustainable fashion, whereas for someone like me, I'm larger chested, I'm a larger person, the options just really aren't there. And I think it's difficult from the brand's perspective as well, because especially smaller brands, they haven't got as large of a team, it can be hard to find fitting models, all that sort of stuff. So there's no like real answer, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. There are ways of utilising your resources. It can sometimes feel like a full-time job, having to look at brands to shop at and what their sort of ecological, like environmental stance is, and then do they also have my size? So it can take a lot of time, and I put a lot of energy myself into sort of trying to pull resources to share with other people who are also in my situation. But it's just, it's easy to see why people would just shy away from it and say, oh, I'm a size 22, there's no options there for me readily available. I haven't got the time to look for them, so I'm just going to carry on with fast fashion, which is like, I can understand, it's completely understand. I think if I'm working full time, I might sort of also have gone down the same route. Luckily, I have a lot of disposable time on my hands. I just want to wrap up as well by stating that Hackworth Design House realised in 2015 that they could extend their sizing and sort of capitalise on the plus size market. Since the plus size market was valued at 7 billion in 2020 and is expected to reach roughly over 9 billion in 2021 and 2022. And they found that 15% of their orders after extending their size range ended up being from plus size individuals. And that is quite a high percentage considering that they're a brand who sells dresses that go up to about $300 US. Like, they're not sort of a cheap option, do you know what I mean? So it can be done and it should be done, but I do think that there's a lot to be said as sort of size inclusivity being a barrier. It can be really hard to feel sort of included or feel like you're being catered for in such a sort of narrow sort of market. You've really got a lack of options available. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up there because I feel like I've just gone on a complete sort of tangent. But yeah, thank you. And I will pass back over to, I believe I'm passing back to Izzy. I don't know.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Thank you, Ellen. And if you are having trouble, especially feeling included, then I would definitely recommend checking out Ellen's blog. It's worth checking out anyway. But following bloggers like Ellen can definitely be a way to find brands who do cater to your size. And next up, we're gonna have Imogen from Clecs. So if you would like to introduce yourself, that would be amazing.
Hiya, yeah, my name is Imogen, and I'm one of the owners of Clecs, which is a family-run Welsh ethical clothing brand. So I run this with my sister, who's an A-level student, and my mum, who's an owner of a hairdresser in Cardiff, and I do it alongside studying a psychology degree. So I'm just going to talk about like why we started the brand, and then I'm going to touch on our ethics and how we ensure that our products are as sustainable as possible. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about greenwashing as well. So we started this brand during the first lockdown. And we kind of started it because we wanted to combine two things that we were really passionate about. So that's supporting local Welsh businesses and slow fashion. So we kind of felt that there was a lack of Welsh medium clothing brands anyway, and especially ones that don't support fast fashion practices. So we'd already decided that this is how we wanted to do it before we started. So we wanted to be as ethical as possible. But the more research we did, the more we realised how difficult it is to source ethically made clothing, because we don't actually make the clothes ourselves. We source them from a supplier. So yeah, we didn't want to support the fast fashion industry because of how destructive it is. So I think 10,000 items of clothing are sent to landfill every 5 minutes, and the fashion industry are responsible for 10% of global carbon dioxide emissions. So we really didn't want to add to that, and we wanted to kind of do it in as ethical a way as possible, which we found out was quite difficult. And we also found that another barrier to doing this was the cost. So the brands that we found, the suppliers that we found who could supply ethical made clothing were a lot more expensive than the other ones. So it kind of makes sense why a lot of small brands will shy away from this, just because of the initial cost of setting it up. But obviously this also has its benefits in that the clothing is better quality. which means that it lasts longer, which hopefully leads to people keeping the products for longer, and hopefully less landfill in the long run. So that's kind of the hope of it. So in terms of how our products are actually ethical, they're made of 100% organic cotton. So that this means that pesticides aren't used, which are harmful for both the environment and farmers. And it also means that the production process requires less water than standard cotton, and that the cotton is softer and more durable. Our sweatshirts also have a reduced carbon footprint of around 28 kilograms of carbon dioxide compared to a conventional sweatshirt. This is because our manufacturers' factories are powered by green renewable energy, and they use low impact agriculture. Our clothes also are audited by the Fair Wear Foundation, and the policy means that the garments are made in a socially responsible way. All workers are paid a living wage, they work fair hours, and there is no use of forced child labour. Our manufacturers are also certified by the Global Organic Textile Standard, which is the strictest certification of textiles produced using organic fibres. So this means that the chain of production is tracked every step of the way, and that it complies with the labour standards of the International Labour Organization. So that's our actual clothing. And we also wanted to make sure that our packaging had little damage on the environment as possible. So we use degradable garment bags, and our mailing bags are made from sugarcane. So they're carbon neutral to produce and recyclable. We also have pretty limited lines, so we have pretty limited stock, which just ensures that we don't have any like excess clothes left over which go to waste, so everything that we stock will get sold. And we also wanted to make clothes which can be worn year round and don't really just fit in with the current fashion trends. And also in terms of size range, yeah, so it was quite difficult to stock a large size range just because of how small our brand is. Like, it's all done in our own home, so we haven't got much space to stock things, and there's not as much demand as a big company. But we've made an effort to stock sizes extra small to 3 extra large. So that's all we can offer at the moment, but we're always hoping to expand on this. And yeah, in terms of greenwashing, so we try to be as transparent as possible, so you can find all that information that I just said on our website. And we also don't claim that we're perfect. We know that there are places that we can definitely improve, and we're always open to suggestions. And it's because we actually do want to be sustainable. It's not just a marketing ploy. So yeah, we're always open to criticism and ways to improve. So yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Imogen. Thank you very much. I definitely recommend checking out Clecs' line. There's some very cute tops, and I especially like the little beanies. It's me next. I already introduced myself, but I think I'll just do a little refresh in case you missed that. So I'm Izzy. I run the sustainable fashion/living blog, The Quirky Environmentalist. I've been online talking about sustainable fashion for about 6 years now, and I think I've gone through a lot of the stages that people do when they get into sustainable fashion, from being really confused to buying a bit more secondhand and sustainable. And now I don't tend to shop very much, but I do like to put a lot of pressure on the big brands who are greenwashing to try and make them change their ways. That's where my focus is now, as well as celebrating small brands. So I'm going to talk specifically on greenwashing in the fashion industry and how to spot it. I could talk for hours on this topic, but we've only got a short amount of time, so don't worry, we'll not be talking for hours on it. And this has been covered a little bit already. But yes, if I could go on to the next slide of my little presentation, please. So first of all, what is greenwashing? Ophelia already covered this a little bit, and there are a few different definitions of this, but greenwashing is generally when brands use PR and marketing to make a product, a clothing line, or their entire business model seem more green than it is. So they'll use ethical or sustainable buzzwords, but often the actual sustainable or ethical work behind the product isn't there. And next slide, please. So I think an important point to make here is that fast fashion brands may co-opt the language of sustainable movements. They may say all the right words, but as you dig a little bit deeper and you look at their business models, they tell a completely different story. There's not, as Ophelia said, there's not a lot of regulation when it comes to green claims, when it comes to sustainable marketing. So these brands use all the words in the world to make themselves seem really green and to keep people buying from them. But as we're going to see from my next example, these things don't stack up. So if I could have the next slide, please. This dress in the middle you may recognise. It is a dress from H&M's Conscious collection, and it was everywhere in the summer, partly because it's bright pink and puffy sleeved, and that's very in fashion, and it is a very cute dress, but mainly because it was marketed as the sustainable dress of the summer. There were influencers wearing it, I saw adverts for it everywhere, and it was touted as the sustainable dress you could buy for only £20. Now, we're ignoring the fact that £20 for a sustainably made dress, a supposedly sustainably made dress, is a bit of a red flag in itself. We're going to ignore that part. Say you'd seen this and you've gone, that's really cute, people are telling me it's sustainable and I think I want to buy it. So you go onto their website to go and purchase it. And this is where, well, the second, apart from the price, big red flag comes up for me. When I went onto the website to try and look at this dress and find out more about it, because I was curious, in the description of the dress, it had a little bit about the dress, what it looked like, its product code, and then about how the dress was made. All it said was material, cotton. It didn't say how this dress was supposedly sustainable. It didn't say what sort of cotton this dress was made of. It didn't say who had made the dress, where it had been made, any of the steps that most sustainable brands will be able to tell you about, or at least try to tell you about. And so that's another red flag. If you go on and there's no transparency, you're just going to have to take the word from this brand that this is supposedly sustainable, and they don't have to give you anything else. Another big red flag is, and you'll see this with a lot of businesses, fast fashion businesses that come out with sustainable collections. These collections will be 10, 20, maybe 50 pieces of clothing out of 1,000 plus different styles of clothing that they'll put out in a month. And that in itself is inherently unsustainable. If I could have the next slide, please. So the fast fashion model itself is an inherently unsustainable and unethical model. A lot of these big brands like Pretty Little Thing and Misguided, I could go on, they will release up to 1,000 plus styles per month. They work on a model of 52 seasons per year. So every single week they're trying to convince you that you need to buy new clothing, you need a new wardrobe, and you need their clothes. This is inherently unsustainable. And until fast fashion starts to change its business model, pretty much any collection that they come out with that's supposedly green is going to be a form of greenwashing. And without the transparency, it's also likely unethical, because if you can't tell me where your clothes are made, you also can't guarantee that these are going to be made fairly and with a living wage. So yeah, that's the sort of whirlwind tour of the start of greenwashing. If I could go on to my next slide, please. As I think Ellen pointed out earlier, it can be quite daunting when you first get into sustainable fashion. You feel like you're not doing a lot right. It can often feel like these brands are trying to confuse you. They have expert PR and marketing teams, and they know exactly what they're talking about when it comes to convincing you that you should still buy their clothes. So you're not always going to get it right. I know I've made a lot of mistakes in my sort of sustainable fashion journey, and still now I'll see a brand and then I'll come out a few months later that maybe I shouldn't have bought from that brand. But it's okay, you're not always going to get it right. The point is to keep giving it a go. Sustainable fashion can be a really rewarding thing to get into, especially when you change the way you look at your wardrobe and have a bit of fun with it. You can learn lots, and just keep caring is basically my message in that one. So thank you very much. And now I get to move swiftly on to our Q&A session. So if I could get everyone's cameras back on, that would be wonderful. Hello again. And I'm just gonna see if we get any questions come up as I'm just waiting for them from the host. So the first one, which I think is a really interesting one, which I'm going to open up to anyone to answer, is do you think that the fashion industry would be able to survive without fast fashion? Does anyone want to jump in here?
I'll take that one, Izzy. So I think the fashion industry will survive without fast fashion. We've seen it before fast fashion came along. And I think now that there's a spread awareness of environmental and ethical issues to do with fashion and its production, a lot more people want to invest their money in sustainable brands, and they're also buying secondhand and vintage more. So I think kind of once everyone's not that everyone's going to know all the ins and outs of sustainability, but I think that growing awareness is really helping the movement, and hopefully people will stop buying into fast fashion. I know it's not like buying secondhand and vintage isn't exactly for everyone, and it's not accessible for exactly everyone, maybe in terms of money or style or size, but I think fashion will be fine. And I know obviously in the last few months and in the last year, really a lot of brands have had this time to reflect on what they're doing and our impact on the environment. So I think we'll be fine, and hopefully we'll be living in a world without fast fashion.
Oh, I think Ophelia's just frozen there, but I think we got the main gist of that. Did anyone want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll just add, in terms of like the model of fast fashion, we've kind of been like brainwashed a bit into thinking that it's like acceptable to pay £5 for a t-shirt or whatever. So I kind of think if brands started moving away from that and like going back to what it used to be like, where you wouldn't expect to pay such little amount of money for something that like so much care has been put into, if kind of like changes the entire model, then there's still a lot of money in the business, just because this is the current way that it's gone. It doesn't mean that we can't go back, and businesses will still be able to survive if they adapt to that model as well.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think that the fashion industry would be able to survive without fast fashion, but I think it would look completely different to what it does today. Okay, we've got our next question. The onus should now be on government and industry needs forcing. It should not be only down to consumer. Do you agree? And how could we make this happen? This is an open question yet again.
I would like to say something actually. I completely agree. I think there was a fast fashion sort of like audit that the government did a couple months ago, and they sort of came away from it being like, nothing needs changing, guys, we're good. And it's frustrating because the consumers, we are asking for better, you know, but there's only so much that I can do from my room. I can't go over to these factories and say, yo, like, can we sort this out? Can we make it fairer? I think a lot does need to be done on the government side of things, and I don't think it's necessarily one of their priorities at the minute, but I think they need to sort of step in and be like, okay, like this is a problem, because I just don't understand how they sort of audited it and were like, no, it's cool. Like, I think there's a lot of loopholes as well with fast fashion businesses, because such a large majority of their factories are overseas. There's only so much that we can do about that. Like, we can't go into another country and start like sort of governing all this, that and the other. But I think there's definitely, I've always said that like it has to be sustainable for the consumer as well. So if you're getting involved in fast fashion anyway, if fast fashion, sustainable fashion even to you is buying one £10 jumper from ASOS and then making it last 10 years, I think that there's a lot to be said for that, as opposed to sort of bankrupting yourself for a whole new wardrobe that you probably won't wear all that often. So I do agree, to be honest. In terms of making it happen, probably just do what we're already doing, like getting involved in the Who Made My Clothes campaign, sort of pushing for more stuff to be done. There's not really, unless we all go and storm the Parliament. I mean, I don't think there's anything we can do, sort of, unless you're on the inside, sort of thing, if that makes sort of sense. So I'll just stop there. Sorry. I could go on for hours.
Anyone have anything to add to that point? Or those points? I think I'll just add that I completely agree. Because there was the fashion report, as Ellen said, and there were so many recommendations on there from industry experts, including just a 1p tax on fast fashion that wouldn't have made any difference to consumers, but could have made a huge difference to the industry. And the government went, we want none of it. And I think that one thing is pushing that back into Parliament again and saying, hey, we're still here. We still want you to make these changes. We're not going anywhere. And yeah, getting involved in things like Pay Up and the Who Made My Clothes campaign, and saying to both government and to these brands, this matters. We're not going to let you continue to get away with it. And we have our next question in here. Thinking about stuff that people mostly want to buy new, like underwear, any recommendations for brands / fibre choices? Does anyone? Okay, I'll give this one a go then. I think for me, fibre can be a big one, because often a lot of stuff is made of nylon or plastics, and you want to kind of avoid those. So I suppose bamboo can be one that's really soft. I own some bamboo things and it's very soft. And as far as brands go, I don't know that many sustainable underwear brands. I own some stuff from Organic Basics, which I enjoy. I know the Brighton Lace, I don't know if they're called the Brighton Lace Company, but there's a Brighton Lace brand that do really nice underwear. So yeah, if you want to go down the sustainable route, I'd say maybe avoid the plastics if you can. And there's definitely some nice sustainable brands out there, but I can't think of many off the top of my head.
Yeah, Izzy, you just mentioned Organic Basics. I think they use Tencel for some of their underwear, which I think is made of wood pulp, but I'm not completely sure. But I think that's meant to be one of the better materials for underwear. And they seem like a pretty sound brand in terms of ethics. So.
Yeah, I own some Tencel things as well, and it's really soft, and you wouldn't believe it's wood pulp, because that sounds a bit odd, but it's a good material. And then
can I just add, Izzy, I think it's important to remember that even if a fabric is natural fabric and it can decompose, it doesn't mean it will decompose if it's in landfill with a load of other things. And I think people forget that when they throw away things and they're just like, oh, it's biodegradable. It may be biodegradable, but if it's not recycled or thrown away properly, then it will go to landfill and it won't decompose.
That's definitely a really good point, because there's certain fibres as well. I can't think of the fibre off the top of my head, but one of the fibres that's most polluting in the ocean is made of natural fibres, but because it is treated and it ends up in the ocean, it's not going to degrade then. So I think fibres is a difficult one, but do your best. One here, is there anything we can do with clothes that have been worn beyond repair? Is there a place where they can be recycled, or any handy tips for what to do with your scraps?
I've got some upcycling recommendations if you'd like to hear them. So with stuff that is like broken beyond repair, you can always kind of salvage some kind of fabric out of it. So you might want to cut it up and you like panel it. I don't know if anyone knows of Lydia Bolton, the designer. I would recommend checking her out. So she upcycles all sorts of fabrics and clothing by paneling them and making them into a new garment and new tops and stuff like that. There are a lot of brands out there that are now using patchwork type stuff, and I think, sorry, there are a lot of brands using patchwork, and it is quite trendy at the moment to have stuff that looks a little bit like handmade as well. And for those bits of fabric that are a little bit too small to use as paneling for something, I would recommend patchworking with it. So you could say you've got something that, like this size, you can maybe attach it to some jeans or cut it out and applique it. There's a lot of different options for fabric that is kind of beyond repair. So yeah.
Any other additions to that wonderful suggestion?
Yeah, I just want to make a suggestion. With like old t-shirts and stuff that I really don't use or can't really wear anymore, I sort of like just repurpose them as a cloth for cleaning, particularly for my mirrors, because they get so dirty, but like regular cleaning cloths aren't soft enough to deal with it. So I just sort of use my old t-shirts and make do. So it's quite a handy one.
Yeah, one great thing to do with old t-shirts as well, if you really like crocheting, is you can split your t-shirt along and make yarn out of old t-shirts, and then you can crochet with it. And my mum's done it, and she's made some cool crochet pots out of old t-shirts, and it's actually quite easy to do. And if you want to get into crocheting but you don't want to buy loads of new fabric, you can use old t-shirts. For the recycling stuff, that's a tricky one, but I would look into your local recycling centres and see if they have textile recycling places. But you want to check that they will take stuff that is sort of beyond repair, or stuff like old underwear and stuff that you wouldn't be able to take to a charity shop. But it's definitely worth checking there to see if they take that as recycling. Next one, are there any good resources you can suggest to find ethical and sustainable fashion brands, or even a list of brands to definitely avoid?
So I can't think of exactly what the sites are called, but there are sites that you can use that that will check the brand credentials, and it'll simply list it out. So it will have different sections like environmental, ethical, and like resources and stuff, and it will clearly list out what that brand is doing for the environment and stuff like that. But they should be easy to find on Google. Just type in fashion brand checker, or like something to do with environmentalism or like sustainability should come up. And I can't think of the names, but there are a few sites that are really good for checking up on brands.
Anyone else want to jump in on that one?
I just want to say, sorry, my voice went. I think the app that Ophelia is thinking of is called Good on You. I use it quite often, and you can sort of, it gives you recommendations as well, so you can sort of see who's doing better and then sort of change your shopping habits according to that. So it's a great app, it's free, and like it's the most helpful thing I've ever found in my life.
Yeah, Good on You is great. Ethical Consumer is a good one to go for, generally for stuff other than fashion products, but they have everything on them. And also generally, if you just Google brand ethical or brand sustainable, you'll find blog posts and stuff where people are talking about how ethical or sustainable that brand is. And if you follow ethical fashion bloggers, like I know me and Ellen have both done lists of brands that we would suggest, or maybe brands that we don't like. So yeah, a bit of Googling, but we'll get there. And the next question is for Imogen specifically, I think. I'm starting my own fashion brand. What are the tips and advice you can give me to start on the right path?
Yeah, so I would say the main thing with starting a brand, if you haven't got that much prior knowledge, I think just research is the most important thing, especially if you're going to use suppliers for your clothes. So like researching what sort of like certifications the brand has, like how they ensure everything is ethical, and then also like making sure that everything, like every part of your business model have you actually like thought about, because it's quite easy to get like caught out. Like I know with packaging, we like sort of got a bit caught out because we didn't really think about it too much before realizing that like just normal packaging isn't going to work. So yeah, you need to make sure you've really thought it through and thought of like every step of the process.
Awesome. I don't know if Ophelia, you had any tips on that as your...
Yeah, so I would class myself more as an embroidery service rather than a fashion brand. I kind of, when I started it, I decided I wanted to be a fashion brand, but now as I've grown a bit more, I think I am more of a service, like a customization service. I think when starting a fashion brand, and whether this is directly sustainable brand, I think it's just important to not take too much notice of what everyone else is doing. If you want to be known for your design.
Oh, unfortunately, Ophelia's frozen in the middle of speaking again. Hopefully she'll come back in a second and she can make that point again. Okay, she's back.
So I was like, you guys can't hear me.
Yeah, we got stopped just after you were saying if you want to be known for design.
So if you want to be known for design, I would just avoid copying other brands too much. There are a lot of brands out there that look very similar. So if you want to stand out, definitely create something that is a bit more original.
Next question. I find shopping ethical an absolute minefield. There's so much greenwashing out there. How do I distinguish what's legitimate and what's not? Who wants to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I will. So yeah, I think as we were just saying about the using apps like Good on You to check, that's a good way of starting off to see what sort of brands there are out there. And I think as well, like one of the main things is checking like what information is available. So I think Izzy was talking about earlier, like H&M like having no information about their products, and if they actually are ethical, then they will include that information. So yeah, I guess just checking that the clothes you're buying like actually are ethical in terms of like where they come from, like what practices they use, how they treat their staff. So yeah, that information should be pretty readily available.
Anyone else want to jump on that one?
I think
as well. Sorry.
I was just going to add that you can kind of tell by how big a brand is as well. If it is as big as like H&M, Primark, New Look and stuff like that, they cannot be sustainable because of the amount they produce. If you want to be like sure of it, maybe invest into a brand that is smaller and maybe local, so you know you're not creating too much like energy to get those things sent to you and things made and stuff like that.
Ellen?
Hi. I just wanted to say, sort of following on from what Ophelia was saying there as well, if they're really rinsing the buzzwords, like every single like product, it's you know what I mean, this sort of, you can kind of tell because they're really trying to milk it, and it's just like, okay, like we get it, but it's sort of, they're doing it to sort of hide the fact that it's not as sustainable as they're saying. They're just sort of going ethical, cotton, blah, all this. I'm just like, great, like it's okay. So yeah, if they're really going for it, just sort of maybe question it just a little bit.
Yeah, I would definitely add on to that. As Imogen was saying earlier, it's not easy to set up an ethical or sustainable business. And so if a brand has gone through the effort to try and make their brand as ethical or sustainable as possible, they will want to shout about that. And they will want to tell you about all the stages that they can tell you about, and they will make an effort to be transparent. And so if that information is there and it's not confusing, like often you go on these huge brands' website and their bit about sustainability and ethics is just pages and pages and pages of words that don't make much sense. That is trying to confuse you. As Ellen said, they're going too hard on it. they're not probably genuinely ethical or sustainable. And on to our next question. How do we get young kids into fashion generally, fashion generally or ethical fashion? They are conscious about global issues, but not so much fashion.
I'll go. It's me. So I think, kids, especially like younger than us and our age, are very clued up on issues in the world, and they might not take so much interest in fashion. But I think we just need to continue educating people and continue having these conversations around fashion to kind of spread the word, and hopefully they'll catch on a little bit. But yeah, I think there is obviously a growing awareness, so more younger people and younger kids are getting into it, which is nice.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to add to that. I would definitely agree with that. Yeah, I think it's definitely about making people more aware. Kids care. And so if you make it so this is fashion, this is what's happening in fashion, keeping that conversation going. And I think young, like Gen Z are definitely very into it, but I don't know about little kids, especially how you would necessarily get them into it, but just telling them what happens, how things are made, making it interesting, and then that sort of becomes part of their life. The next question, do you think social media is a force for good or bad when it comes to fast fashion? Also, as in, does it feed consumerism, or is it a good place to learn about activism?
I definitely say that I've learned a lot on social media about fast fashion. I guess that's kind of like where I started off wanting to quit fast fashion after seeing so much on social media about it. So yeah, in that way I think it's a really great way of raising awareness and also finding brands that don't endorse fast fashion practices.
Yeah, just adding on to that, I think it is kind of it's a force for good and also for bad, because for a lot of us we're into sustainable fashion, so our kind of opinions will be always fed back to us on the algorithms and stuff like that, so we don't exactly know much. We don't see a lot of, say, fast fashion adverts and stuff, because that's not what we're interested in. I think with Instagram especially, it's really fed the need for continuously having new outfits and stuff. I think people are a bit more aware of it now, that we don't need to have a new outfit for every single occasion. And it's really kind of pushed the disposable culture, and that's why brands like Pretty Little Thing and ASOS have done so well. It's because they know that everyone wants new stuff. But yeah, just going back to what I said, I think we just need to spread awareness about it, and social media can be good for that reason, because you can reach people and you can connect and find your community. So yeah, it's kind of 50-50.
Ellen, did you want to add anything onto that one?
Actually, yeah. I think it's a bit of both. I think it's great because loads of people are now learning about sustainable fashion who might not have before. I think it's difficult when you've got sort of the big influencers with millions of followers saying, oh look, I've just spent £500 on this website, here's all the stuff that I bought, and then they're showing this to normal people. So not that they're not normal, but you know what I mean, like the average individual who's not earning £1,000 through Instagram. And what you don't see is sort of after they've done this haul, they've then returned the clothes and they've not actually kept them, and then it's just sort of feeding this constant sort of, buy this because I've got it and I've taken a photo in it, and then you can be like me. And people feel better about themselves, especially when they look up to people and they can sort of emulate their style, especially if it's sort of on the cheaper end as well. And I just think that certain popular dating shows have a lot to answer for, with this sort of influencer sort of culture. And also, I hate that Instagram have introduced the buy button on where the likes used to be. I hate that so much, because it's literally like, I've nearly bought, I think, a pair of like galaxy print leggings about 6 times, and I'm just trying to check my likes and my comments. Every time it catches me out, every time. And I think yeah, it's both. It's very sort of mixed bag, but if you're looking for the sort of sustainable side of things, there is no lack in resources on sort of Instagram and Twitter, that sort of thing. Like, you'll be bombarded with loads. So good place to start researching, bad place if you're trying to avoid buying sort of £5 leggings. So yeah.
Yeah, 100% on that one. I think it really depends on who you follow and where you are in your little bubble on social media. And as the last question, if you wanted everyone watching to take one thing away from the conversation this evening, what would it be? I think that's a difficult one, but I'm gonna I'm gonna get Imogen to start on that one.
I guess I would just say, don't like fall for the marketing ploys of massive companies who do like ethical ranges, because it's just contradictory, really. If it's like a big brand doing one range, even if like that range in itself is perfect in every way, you're still endorsing this massive brand and helping them fund an ethical practices. So I guess just like make sure where you're buying from actually is a good brand.
Ophelia?
There's so many things I could say. If there's one thing I could maybe highlight, is I would really hope that everyone goes and has a look at their wardrobe a little bit, and maybe tries on some clothes that they haven't tried on for a while. Maybe they fit differently now, and have a think about how they can upcycle and get more wear out of their wardrobe.
Ellen?
I would say just sort of do your best, to be honest. I think that there's no need to jump in head first. I did completely sort of wreck my head for months. It's up to you. It sort of depends on the type of person you are. I think I just love sort of new projects, so that became my project for a while. Even if sort of your buying habits change from less, like sort of buying less, making it go further, even though they might not be from the best brands, I think that's a good sort of place to start, especially. And then you can look at moving forward then to buying from, or looking to buy from, more sustainable options, especially if they're sort of the higher price range and you might have to save up for a bit. But yeah, I just think, like, don't necessarily put a lot of pressure on yourself, because I think it's easy to see people on Instagram who are doing like 10 times better than what you want us currently doing. And I know that I sort of sit there and I think, oh my God, like, I am not that far along. But like, we're all going at our own pace. So I think definitely just sort of, just do your best. Don't sort of try and rush anything. You will eventually sort of get to a point that you're happy with. So yeah.
Yeah, I think my very quick closing message, as we've only got 1 minute left, would be we cannot buy our way to a more sustainable planet. We cannot buy our way to a better planet. No matter what big brands try and convince you of, it's not possible. So a lot of the time it comes from slowing down, and this can be really daunting, but it can also be really fun, like having fun with the wardrobe that you have, maybe learning to sew, upcycle, just having a bit of fun with it and slowing down is definitely my message from that. And as we're supposed to be finishing now, I will say thank you very much from all our panelists tonight, from our tech team as well as our translator. Thank you all for joining us and sending in your questions. You can check out everyone here's work. It should have been in the link when you were first coming on to the Eventbrite. Remember, there's another talk tomorrow night at the same time on Love Food, Hate Waste. So if you've enjoyed this and you want to know more about sustainable food, you should definitely sign up for that, and that should be in the chat link to that. You should also have seen links for donations, as Amgueddfa Cymru is a charity. Donations really help events like this keep happening, and you can also give your feedback. Now that that's all over, I want to say thank you very much for everyone, as I've already said, and have a good night. I'll start.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.